"Your lake belongs to the community now," she screamed, waving HOA documents in my face while her crew set up party tables on my property. This woman actually believed she could commandeer my private 15-acre lake for HOA events just because people could see it from the road. 500 guests, she said, monthly parties, wedding showcases, all on the land my family has owned for generations. If you're watching this from anywhere in America, comment below, has your HOA ever tried to steal your property? What this HOA president didn't realize was that my attorney was about to unleash something that would bring her whole power trip crashing down. It was a perfect Saturday morning in May, the kind that makes you grateful to be alive. My 16-year-old daughter Madison and I were sitting on the dock my grandfather built with his own hands back in 1952, our fishing lines creating gentle ripples across the glassy surface of the water. "Dad, I've been thinking about the lanterns for my Sweet 16, Madison said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "What if we string them all along the dock and let some float on the water, like fireflies dancing on the lake, just like Grandpa used to describe?" I smiled at the memory of my grandfather's stories, and something he once told me echoed in my mind. "This lake is protected better than Fort Knox, son. Never forget that." At the time, I thought he just meant the deed and property lines. I had no idea how right he was. The peaceful morning shattered at exactly 7:30, when the sound of multiple car engines and aggressive honking violated the sanctuary of our property. Madison and I exchanged confused looks as we made our way up the slope toward the house. There, standing at my front gate like she owned the place, was Becky Harrison, president of our HOA for the past 3 years. She clutched a clipboard like it was a weapon, flanked by her treasurer Derek Thompson and 2 other board members I didn't recognize. The fake smile plastered on her face reminded me of a shark circling its prey. "Nathan Brooks," she announced, not asked, already scribbling something on her papers. "We need to discuss your lake." "Good morning to you too, Becky," I said, keeping my voice level despite the warning bells going off in my head. "What about my lake?" She laughed, a sound that could curdle milk. "Well, that's where we disagree on the possessive pronoun." The HOA board held an emergency meeting last night and we voted unanimously. Your lake is the perfect venue for our annual summer gala. We'll need full access starting Memorial Day weekend. I felt Madison tense beside me. "I'm sorry, what? This is private property? It's been in my family since 1952. You can't just decide to use it." Becky's smile widened as she flipped through her papers with theatrical flair. "Actually, according to Visual Amenity Clause 47.3 in the HOA bylaws, any water feature visible from the community roads falls under HOA jurisdiction for community enhancement purposes." I pulled out my phone immediately and called my best friend since college, Ryan Morrison, who happened to be a property law attorney. "Ryan, quick question. Can an HOA claim my private lake because people can see it from the street?" I put him on speaker so Becky could hear his response. "That's complete BS, Nathan. Visual amenity clauses apply to maintenance standards, not ownership or access rights. Tell whoever's claiming that to pound sand." Becky's face flushed red, but she recovered quickly. "Your lawyer friend doesn't understand the full scope of our planning. This isn't just a little party, Mr. Brooks." She pulled out a folder and spread architectural drawings across the hood of her car. My jaw dropped as I saw detailed blueprints of my property, complete with a massive stage, 30 round tables, a catering tent, and parking spots drawn all over my pristine lawn. "We're expecting 500 guests for the first annual Sunset Ridge Wedding Showcase," she continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. 20 of the area's premier wedding vendors, 3 live bands, and 5 lucky couples will win free ceremonies at our new waterfront venue. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a community party. This was about business. "You're planning to use my private property as a commercial wedding venue?" I asked, incredulous. Derek stepped forward, waving what looked like official documents. "The paperwork's already been filed with the county. Sunset Ridge Waterfront Weddings, LLC. We've even secured a business license." I noticed something else on the papers, a notary stamp that looked suspiciously fresh, dated just yesterday. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice hardening. "This is private property. You have no legal right." Becky's shark smile returned. "We'll see about that. The community needs this venue, and we're prepared to make it happen, one way or another." She turned on her heel and marched back to her car, her entourage following like well-trained puppies. "Oh, and Nathan," she called over her shoulder, "I'd start looking for alternative plans for Madison's little party. The lake will be quite busy this summer." As their cars pulled away, Madison grabbed my arm. "Dad, she can't do this, can she? We've been planning my Sweet 16 for 2 years. Everyone's already saved the date for July 15th. I hugged my daughter close. Don't worry, sweetheart. Nobody's taking our lake. But even as I said the words, a cold dread settled in my stomach. Becky Harrison had the look of someone who'd already won, and that terrified me more than any legal threat. Madison and I headed back to the house to research HOA laws and document everything that had just happened. Neither of us noticed the fresh tire tracks leading down to our dock, or the small orange survey flags that had appeared overnight along our property line. After Becky's car disappeared, I immediately called our closest neighbors. Lock your gates and check your property lines, I warned each one. Tom Wilson found survey stakes in his backyard. Jennifer Park discovered footprints around her pool house. Someone had been systematically cataloging our entire neighborhood's assets. As Madison and I walked our property line, she suddenly stopped. Dad, remember what great-grandpa used to say, the only thing worth more than land is the love that protects it. Her words hit me like a physical blow. 3 generations of love were embedded in this soil, and now someone wanted to steal it with bureaucratic tricks. Madison screamed from the driveway just as I was uploading security footage from our front gate. I ran outside to find her standing frozen, staring at our dock in horror. Someone had spray-painted blood-red letters across the weathered wood my grandfather had carefully laid 70 years ago. Sweet 16 canceled. This lake is ours. But that wasn't the worst part. Madison's carefully designed Sweet 16 invitations, the ones she'd spent weeks perfecting with watercolor paintings of the lake, were nailed to each post, torn in half. 127 invitations, representing every friend she'd invited to celebrate at the only home she'd ever known, destroyed in an act of calculated cruelty. My hands shook with rage as I photographed the vandalism, while Madison collected the torn pieces of her invitations, tears streaming down her face. "Who would do this, Dad?" she asked, her voice breaking. I knew exactly who, but proving it would be another matter entirely. After calling the police to file a vandalism report, I opened my laptop to do some research on our HOA president. What I found made my blood run cold. The Sunset Ridge Waterfront Weddings website had been live for 6 months, complete with professional photos of my lake from every possible angle. The pricing page listed packages starting at $5,000 with premium lakefront ceremonies running up to $15,000. The testimonials section showed glowing reviews from happy couples, all dated in the future. "Madison, look at this," I called over, trying to keep my voice calm. The booking calendar showed something even more disturbing. 9 weddings already scheduled for the summer, with deposits paid in full according to the little green check marks next to each date. August 3rd, August 10th, August 17th, all the way through Labor Day weekend. Becky wasn't just planning to steal my property, she'd already sold it to unsuspecting couples. I needed to talk to someone who understood Becky's methods, and I knew just the person. Frank Rodriguez had been HOA president before Becky orchestrated his removal 3 years ago. I found him at our local coffee shop, and he looked nervously around before gesturing for me to sit in the back corner booth. "Nathan, I heard about what she's trying to do," he said, his voice low. "You need to understand something about Becky Harrison. She's done this before." Frank pulled out his phone and showed me photos of a community garden that used to belong to an elderly woman named Mrs. Miller. She owned that quarter-acre plot free and clear just like you own your lake. Becky started with small violations, noise complaints about Mrs. Miller's wind chimes, fines for unsightly tomato plants. When Mrs. Miller pushed back, things escalated. He swiped to show more photos. Legal documents, violation notices, liens. Within 6 months, Mrs. Miller was so overwhelmed with legal fees and daily fines that she sold the property for a fraction of its value just to make it stop. Guess who bought it through a shell company? My stomach churned. The Johnsons' tennis court, the Patel family's meditation garden, all absorbed by the HOA through systematic harassment. Your lake is her biggest target yet. As if on cue, Carlos Martinez appeared at our table, all smiles and concerned neighbor act. "Nathan, I heard about the trouble with Becky. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. We neighbors need to stick together, right?" He asked a lot of questions about my legal strategy, whether I'd hired an attorney yet, what my next moves would be. Something felt off about his sudden interest in my problems. After he left, Amy Wilson, who lived 3 houses down from me, caught up with me in the parking lot. "Nathan, be careful with Carlos," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "I saw him at Becky's house last week and they seemed very friendly. Too friendly, if you know what I mean." This was getting more complicated by the hour. When I got home, a certified letter was waiting in my mailbox. Violation notice, improper maintenance of visual amenity. it read in bold red letters. The complaint stated that my lake showed signs of excessive algae growth that detracted from the community's aesthetic standards. The fine, $500 per day until corrected. Attached were 15 photos of my lake taken from various angles, some clearly shot from inside my property line. The timestamp showed they were taken at 5:43 in the morning 2 days ago. Someone had been sneaking onto my property in the pre-dawn darkness, documenting my lake for Becky's scheme. I called Ryan immediately. "She's starting the harassment campaign," I told him. "Fake violations, $500 a day." Ryan's voice was grim. "Document everything, every letter, every interaction, every trespass. We're going to need a paper trail a mile long." That evening, as I installed motion sensor cameras around the property, I noticed Carlos having an animated conversation with his wife Maria in their backyard. Even from a distance, I could see Maria was crying. "I can't do this anymore," I heard Carlos say. "The things she's asking me to do." Maria's response was muffled, but I caught the words, "the photos," and "our daughter." Suddenly, Carlos's eager helpfulness made sense. Becky had something on him, and she was using it to make him her spy. I felt a moment of sympathy for the man, even as I realized I couldn't trust anything he'd said to me. The web Becky was weaving was more complex than I'd imagined, and I was starting to understand how she'd successfully stolen 3 properties before setting her sights on mine. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Carlos's tortured expression. Ryan had discovered more about Becky's previous conquests. The Johnsons' tennis court was now a community sports facility that charged $20 per hour. Mrs. Miller's garden had become an event space, renting for $500 per day. The Patel Meditation Garden converted to a pay-per-visit wellness center. All the profits flowed directly to HOA accounts that Becky controlled. The pattern was clear: identify unique property features, harass owners into submission, commercialize for profit. Later, through the window, I saw Carlos in his garage, staring at a photo of Maria in her wedding dress. She'd fled an abusive arranged marriage in her home country, finding love and safety with Carlos. If her conservative family saw any photos suggesting impropriety before their marriage, they'd disown her completely. Becky had found the perfect pressure point. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood went cold. It was a photo of Madison at school, taken that very day from across the street with a telephoto lens. She was laughing with friends, completely unaware she was being watched. The caption read, "Pretty daughter, would be a shame if her sweet 16 became a funeral, back off the lake." My hands shook as I screenshot the message and immediately called the police. Then Ryan. "She just threatened Madison," I said, already grabbing my keys to go pick up my daughter from her after-school drama club. "This isn't about property anymore. She's threatening my child." Ryan's voice was steel. "Go get Madison. I'll meet you at the police station. This just became a criminal matter." The police took the threat seriously, especially after I showed them the vandalism photos and the text message. Detective Lisa Sherman, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes, promised to investigate, but warned me that proving Becky sent the threat would be difficult. "These people often use burner phones," she explained, "but we'll subpoena the phone records and see what we can find. In the meantime, I'd suggest upgrading your security." That night, I barely slept. Every sound had me checking the new cameras I'd installed, watching for any sign of intrusion. At 2:47 a.m., the motion sensors went crazy. I grabbed my phone to check the live feed and saw 3 figures near my dock, measuring and taking photos. Without thinking, I threw on clothes and ran outside, arriving just in time to see Derek Thompson and 2 men I didn't recognize scrambling back toward the road. "This is criminal trespassing," I shouted, my phone already recording. "I'm calling the police." Derek turned back, his face pale in the moonlight. "We're just documenting HOA property," he stammered, before breaking into a run. I managed to get clear video of all 3 faces and their license plates as they peeled out in a white van. The next morning, Ryan arrived at my house with a thick folder and a grim expression. "Nathan, you need to see what I've found." He spread documents across my kitchen table like evidence in a crime drama. Sunset Ridge Waterfront Weddings, LLC, was registered 8 months ago, long before any HOA vote. Becky's the sole proprietor, but here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out printed bank records and contracts. She's already collected $45,000 in deposits from 9 couples. I reached out to one of them through a friend. They think they're getting married at a historic private estate that the HOA recently acquired for community use. "She told them the property was already transferred?" I asked, incredulous. Ryan nodded. "Every contract has her signature and a notary stamp from her cousin, who, surprise, surprise, is a notary. But these contracts are dated months before any supposed HOA vote. This is straight up fraud." As we were reviewing the evidence, my phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. She wants update on lawyer meeting ASAP. My heart sank as I realized he'd sent it to me by mistake. The message was clearly meant for Becky. I looked at Ryan. Looks like we found our mole. An hour later, I confronted Carlos at his front door. His face crumbled when I showed him the text. Nathan, I'm so sorry. You don't understand what she has on me. The story tumbled out in a rush. Before Carlos married Maria, she'd had a brief relationship with someone else. Becky had somehow obtained photos from that time, innocent but easy to misinterpret. If my traditional family sees these, they'll disown Maria. My daughter would lose her grandparents. I had no choice but to feed her information. His genuine anguish made me pity him, even as I processed the betrayal. Carlos, she's committed fraud. She's threatened my daughter. You need to do the right thing, he nodded slowly. I know. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Meanwhile, Madison was facing her own battles at school. When I picked her up that afternoon, she was quieter than usual. Finally, she broke down. Dad, everyone's talking about how we're selfish for keeping the lake private. Becky's been telling people we're hoarding a community resource. My friend Jennifer said her mom thinks we're the bad guys. She uninvited me from her pool party. My heart broke watching my daughter suffer for adult greed. Sweetheart, you know the truth. This is our property, our family's legacy. But I could see the doubt creeping in. The social isolation was part of Becky's strategy, and it was working. That evening, I called a meeting with my immediate neighbors to set the record straight. I showed them the evidence. The fake wedding business, the fraudulent contracts, the threats against Madison. Most were shocked, but a few seemed skeptical. Maybe sharing the lake wouldn't be such a bad thing, one suggested. The community could benefit from a nice venue. I realized Becky had been poisoning the well for months, spreading her narrative while I'd remained silent. It was time to fight back with truth. I hired a professional security company to patrol the property 24/7 and installed 30 high-definition cameras with night vision and live streaming capabilities. Every entrance got new locks, and I posted signs every 50 feet. Protected, 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 protected by 24-hour surveillance. I even added a quote from the Constitution about property rights, making it clear this was about fundamental freedoms, not just a neighborhood dispute. The security measures sent a clear message, but they also made me feel like a prisoner on my own land. This was exactly what Becky wanted, to make life so miserable that I'd give up and give in. But she'd underestimated one thing: my determination to protect my daughter's happiness and my family's legacy. Amy spread her wedding planning scrapbook across my kitchen table, pages filled with fabric swatches, flower arrangements, and photos of my lake at sunset. I've been planning this for 18 months, she said, voice breaking. My fiancé is deployed overseas. This lake wedding was supposed to be our new beginning when he returns. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. 7 more defrauded couples had seen our neighborhood forum post. The numbers were staggering. 63,000 in stolen deposits across 11 couples. This wasn't just HOA overreach anymore. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise, and my lake was meant to be their biggest score yet. I woke to the sound of engines, dozens of them, rumbling down our quiet street. Pulling back the curtain, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. 3 tour buses were parking in front of my house, and people were pouring out, at least 100 of them. They all wore matching red t-shirts with "Save Our Community Lake" printed in white letters. Becky stood at my gate with a megaphone, her smile visible even from my bedroom window. Time for democracy in action, Nathan, her amplified voice boomed. These concerned citizens from neighboring communities have come to support our vote for eminent domain. Hope you're ready to see how real Americans handle greedy landowners. The emergency HOA meeting was a circus from the start. Our community center, which usually held maybe 20 people for monthly meetings, was packed with over 200 strangers. Becky had literally bussed in supporters from 3 counties away, and they were all eager to vote on something they had no legal right to decide. Ryan stood beside me as we entered, whispering legal violations he was documenting on his phone. Non-residents can't vote on HOA matters, he said. This is so illegal it's almost comical. But there was nothing funny about the hostile energy in the room. People I'd never seen before glared at me, like I was some cartoon villain hoarding water from dying children. Becky called the meeting to order with theatrical flair, banging her gavel like she was presiding over the Supreme Court. We're here today to vote on exercising eminent domain over the abandoned and underutilized waterfront property currently claimed by Nathan Brooks, she announced. Abandoned? I stood up. I was fishing there this morning with my daughter. But my voice was drowned out by coordinated booing from the red-shirted brigade. The vote was a sham. Becky called for a show of hands, and sea of strangers raised their arms in unison. "The motion passes, 67 to 45, she announced triumphantly. Ryan jumped to his feet. "Point of order. I demand to see HOA membership verification for every voter. California law is crystal clear. Only registered homeowners within the HOA boundaries can vote on community matters." The room erupted in chaos. Real neighbors started demanding to know who these strangers were. One red shirt admitted he'd been promised $50 and lunch for showing up. That's when Madison surprised everyone. My normally shy daughter walked to the front of the room and took the microphone from Becky's hand before anyone could stop her. "My name is Madison Brooks," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "My great-grandfather built our dock with his own hands in 1952. He taught my grandfather to fish there. My grandfather taught my dad taught me." She pulled out her phone and connected it to the projector, showing photos spanning 4 generations. Birthday parties, graduations, quiet mornings, family celebrations, all centered around the lake. "Mrs. Harrison, you're not just trying to steal property. You're trying to steal memories that haven't even been made yet. I've been planning my Sweet 16 at that lake since I was 12. Every one of my friends has RSVP'd. If I've done something wrong, it's loving the place where I grew up." Her voice cracked on the last words, and I saw several red shirts quietly removing their shirts and heading for the exits. Even hired protesters have consciences, apparently. Becky tried to regain control, but the damage was done. The real community members were starting to ask hard questions. Why do we need a wedding venue? Who's profiting from this? Why wasn't this discussed at regular meetings? Ryan seized the moment. "I've been investigating the HOA's financial records," he announced. $75,000 is missing from the maintenance budget. Strangely enough, that's exactly how much Becky Harrison owed in gambling debts before she miraculously paid them off last month. The room went dead silent. Becky's face had gone from red to white. "Furthermore," Ryan continued, "Sunset Ridge Waterfront Weddings has already collected $45,000 in deposits for weddings at a venue the HOA doesn't own. That's fraud, plain and simple. If these weddings don't happen, Becky doesn't just face civil lawsuits, she faces criminal charges." The meeting descended into pandemonium. Real neighbors demanded to see financial records. The fake voters fled like rats from a sinking ship. In the chaos, Carlos Martinez approached me. "I have recordings," he said quietly. "Every planning session, every threat, everything she said about destroying you." He handed me a USB drive. "She made me help her, but I recorded it all. She talks about burning your dock if you don't comply, about reporting fake code violations until you're bankrupt. She even laughs about making Madison cry." My gratitude was mixed with rage as I pocketed the evidence. That evening, as Madison and I were reviewing security footage, her phone started blowing up with notifications. "Dad," she said, her face going pale, "there's a video." The deepfake was sophisticated and devastating. It showed me violently pushing Becky into the lake while she screamed for help. The title read, "Violent Homeowner Assaults Elderly HOA President." It already had 500,000 views and climbing. The comments were brutal. Death threats, calls for my arrest, people promising to show up at our house. Madison's classmates were sharing it, adding their own cruel commentary. "This isn't me," I said desperately. "Madison, you know this isn't real." But I could see the damage in her eyes. Not doubt about the video, but pain from seeing her father portrayed as a monster. My phone rang. It was the principal of Madison's school. "Mr. Brooks, I'm calling about a concerning situation." The school cafeteria footage made my heart shatter. Madison sat alone at a corner table. Her usual group of friends clustered across the room, shooting glances her way. One girl held up her phone, showing the viral video to others who gasped and pointed. My brilliant, confident daughter hunched over her lunch, trying to become invisible. Her drama teacher, Mrs. Brown, called me that afternoon. Madison asked to drop out of the lead role. She says she doesn't want to bring negative attention to the production. Mr. Brooks, I've never seen her this defeated. That evening, I found Madison in her room, staring at her Sweet 16 planning journal. "Maybe we should just cancel it, Dad. Even if we win, who would come now?" The resignation in her voice was worse than tears. Becky wasn't just attacking our property anymore. She was destroying my daughter's spirit. My darkest moment came that night in the garage. I sat surrounded by boxes of family photos, 3 generations of memories at the lake, wondering if I should just give up. The legal bills were mounting. My daughter was being traumatized. My reputation was being destroyed by lies spreading at the speed of social media. Maybe Becky had won. Maybe it wasn't worth fighting anymore. I had my phone in my hand, Ryan's number pulled up, ready to tell him to negotiate a sale. That's when Madison found me. She looked at the photos scattered around, at the defeat in my posture, and something fierce flashed in her eyes. "Dad, you're not giving up. Not now. Not ever." She picked up a photo of my grandfather. Would he quit? Would he let some criminal steal what he built? She was right. My grandfather faced down actual Nazis in World War II. I could handle a suburban tyrant with a gambling problem. "You're right," I said, standing up. "She wants a fight? She's got one." The deepfake video now had 2 million views. The principal had called because someone phoned in a threat, claiming I was dangerous and might harm students. Madison had been locked in the principal's office for her safety while police verified the threat wasn't credible. She'd missed her final rehearsal for the drama club's spring show, where she had the lead role. Becky wasn't just attacking me anymore. She was systematically destroying my daughter's life. The cruelty of it took my breath away. But it also filled me with a cold, determined rage. Becky Harrison had made a critical mistake. She'd gone after my child. Now, I wasn't just defending property. I was protecting my family, and I was done playing defense. Ryan burst through my door the next morning with the energy of someone who'd just discovered gold. "Nathan, your grandfather was a genius." He carefully unfolded a yellow document from 1973. "I was going through all the property papers when I found this codicil to the original deed. Listen to this," he read aloud, his voice shaking with excitement. "Upon any attempt of forced seizure, hostile takeover, or eminent domain action against said property, ownership shall immediately and irrevocably transfer to the Nature Conservancy for establishment as a permanent wildlife preserve." I stared at the paper in disbelief. He saw this coming? 50 years ago? Ryan grinned. "Your grandfather apparently dealt with similar property grabbers in his time. This is ironclad. If Becky tries to force any kind of taking, she doesn't get a wedding venue. She gets a protected habitat where the only ceremonies allowed will be performed by frogs." Madison, who'd been listening from the doorway, let out the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in days. "Grandpa's still protecting us," she said, "even from the grave. But we still had the deepfake problem to deal with." Madison, digital native that she was, had ideas. "Dad, we fight lies with truth, and we need to go viral with the real story." She set up a makeshift studio in our living room, teaching me about ring lights and camera angles. "We'll show them the real security footage. Every time Becky trespassed. Every threat. Every lie." The response video took us 6 hours to create. Madison's editing skills were remarkable, zooming in on timestamps, creating split screens showing the fake versus real footage, adding subtle music that built tension without overwhelming the narrative. But the most powerful moment was raw and unedited. Madison talking directly to the camera about what this lake meant to our family. We uploaded it with the title, "The Truth, HOA President's Criminal Conspiracy Exposed." Within 3 hours, it hit 1 million views. The comments section exploded with support. People shared their own HOA horror stories. News outlets started reaching out. The tide was turning. The deepfakes' impact rippled beyond social media. 3 clients canceled contracts with my cybersecurity firm, citing reputation concerns. My own expertise was being used against me. People assumed if anyone could fake a video, it would be me. The irony was bitter. Madison threw herself into research, discovering the telltale signs of AI manipulation. "Look, Dad, the shadow angles are wrong here. And his earlobes don't match yours." AI always struggles with ears. We spent hours creating comparison charts, technical breakdowns that would convince anyone willing to look at facts. But the damage was spreading faster than truth. Our mailbox was vandalized twice. Someone left a dead fish on our doorstep with a note, "Swimming with the fishes soon." Even neighbors who knew us for years crossed the street to avoid conversation. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict before seeing evidence. But the real bombshell came from security camera number 17. While reviewing footage from the past week, I found something that made my jaw drop. At 2:47 a.m. 3 nights ago, Becky Harrison appeared on camera in a wedding dress, carrying a gas can. She doused my grandfather's dock with gasoline, then stood there for a full minute with a lighter in her hand. The only reason the dock didn't burn was the morning dew had made the wood too damp to catch properly. She'd tried to destroy the very heart of our property while dressed for the wedding she'd never have there. I immediately sent the footage to Detective Sherman and the FBI, who I'd learned had been monitoring Becky for potential connections to a larger wedding fraud ring. Within hours, Amy Wilson was at my door with 8 other women, all holding wedding contracts for my lake. "We saw your video," Amy said. "We're all victims of her scam. $45,000 between us." The stories were heartbreaking. Sarah Brown had saved for 3 years for her dream wedding. Jennifer Martinez was 8 months pregnant and had spent her baby moon fund on a deposit. An elderly couple, the Thompsons, had paid for a 50th anniversary vow renewal with their retirement savings. "She told us it was an exclusive venue," Jennifer said through tears. "Said the HOA had acquired it for community use. She even showed us fake permits." The women had formed a support group and were preparing both criminal complaints and civil lawsuits. But tonight, they'd come for something else: solidarity. We sat around my kitchen table and I showed them everything: the fraudulent contracts, the fake notarizations, the financial records Ryan had uncovered. The mood shifted from despair to determination. These weren't just victims anymore. They were allies in the fight for justice. The meeting was interrupted by pounding on my door at 11 p.m. Security cameras showed Becky, clearly intoxicated, swaying on my porch. I activated the Ring doorbell recording before responding. "What do you want, Becky?" Her response was slurred but clear enough for legal purposes. "I'll cut you in, Nathan. 40%. Just let me use the damn lake. These stupid brides won't sue if I deliver the venue. I know people who can make problems go away. Your little Madison isn't as safe as you think. School, drama club, that coffee shop she loves on 3rd Street. Accidents happen." I kept my voice steady. "Becky, you're threatening my daughter on camera. You just confessed to fraud. You should leave before the police arrive." She laughed, an ugly sound. "You think you've won? You have no idea who you're messing with. I've got connections you can't imagine." She stumbled away, but the damage was done. I now had video evidence of fraud, confession, and threats against a minor. Detective Sherman arrived within minutes of my call. "This changes everything," she said, after viewing the footage. "Threatening a minor is federal. I'm contacting the FBI tonight." The community response to our video was overwhelming. A petition to remove Becky and her entire board reached 500 signatures in 2 days. Local news picked up the story with the headline, "Wedding Scam at Sunset Ridge." The state attorney general's office announced an investigation into HOA fraud. But even with the restraining order granted the next morning, requiring Becky to stay 1,000 feet from my property and family, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done. My instincts proved right at 3 a.m. when our cameras caught her again. This time, she stood exactly 1,001 feet from our property line, wearing that same wedding dress, holding binoculars trained on Madison's bedroom window. For 3 hours, she just stood there in the darkness, watching. Legal, but deeply disturbing. When Madison saw the footage the next morning, she grabbed my hand. "Dad, she's not going to stop, is she?" I pulled my daughter close. "No, sweetheart. But neither are we. And we have something she doesn't have. We have the truth, the law, and each other." The FBI's involvement changed everything overnight. Agent Martinez, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, sat in my living room, reviewing evidence. "Mr. Brooks, we've been investigating Rebecca Harrison for 2 years. She's part of a multi-state wedding fraud ring. Your evidence is the breakthrough we needed." She explained that Becky was the West Coast coordinator for a sophisticated operation that had scammed couples out of nearly $2 million across 5 states. Your video going viral forced her to make desperate moves. The drunk confession, the threats against your daughter, these are the mistakes we've been waiting for her to make. The federal courthouse in Sacramento was packed on the morning of Becky's trial. 23 charges ranging from fraud and extortion to attempted arson and making terroristic threats against a minor. Becky sat at the defendant's table in a beige suit that couldn't hide her diminished state. Gone was the confident HOA president who'd stood at my gate making demands. Her lawyer, an overworked public defender, tried to argue that stress and financial pressure had driven her to make poor decisions. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Dana Brooks, wasn't having it. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated criminal enterprise designed to steal property and defraud innocent couples of their life savings. She laid out the evidence methodically: the fraudulent contracts, the forged documents, the systematic harassment of homeowners, the threats against a child. But the real drama came when Becky was in the middle of testifying about her misunderstandings with the couples. The courtroom doors burst open and 30 women in wedding dresses flooded in. They moved like an army of betrayed dreams, white silk and taffeta rustling as they filled every available space. The pregnant bride, Jennifer Martinez, led them, her 8-month belly prominent under her empire waist gown. Behind her, the elderly Mrs. Thompson clutched her husband's arm, both in their wedding attire from 50 years ago. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! What is the meaning of this?" Jennifer stepped forward. "Your Honor, we're the victims of Rebecca Harrison's fraud. We demand to be heard." The judge looked at the prosecutor, who nodded. "I'll allow it. 5 minutes each, but maintain decorum." What followed was devastating. Each woman told her story. Jennifer sobbed about using her baby fund for a deposit. "My fiancé left because he thought I was lying about losing the money. I'm raising this child alone because of her greed." Sarah Brown held up her phone, showing her wedding planning blog with 200,000 followers. "I promoted her venue to thousands of brides. They trusted me because I trusted her. She didn't just steal from me, she made me an unwitting accomplice to fraud." The elderly Mrs. Thompson's testimony hit hardest. 60 years we saved for the perfect 50th anniversary renewal. My husband has stage 3 cancer. This was our last chance for a perfect day, and she stole it. One of the younger brides, Ashley Burton, 22 and fresh out of college, sobbed as she testified. "I postponed my honeymoon to afford the deposit. My fiancé's family already thinks I'm irresponsible with money. Now they want him to call off the wedding entirely. Ms. Harrison didn't just steal $5,000, she stole my future family's trust." When the prosecutor displayed Madison's torn invitations, several jurors gasped. The shredded watercolors, each painted by hand, told their own story of cruelty. In the gallery's back row, I noticed an elderly woman dabbing her eyes. Later I learned it was Becky's mother, who whispered to anyone who'd listen, "I didn't raise her like this." By the time they finished, several jury members were wiping away tears. Even the judge seemed affected. But I knew our testimony would be crucial. When called to the stand, I presented everything chronologically: the harassment, the vandalism, the threats. I showed Madison's Sweet 16 planning journal, started 2 years ago, filled with sketches of decorations and lists of songs. "This wasn't just about property," I said, looking directly at the jury. "She tried to steal my daughter's faith in fairness, her belief that working hard and following rules means something." Then came the security footage. The attempted arson, Becky in her wedding dress with the gas can, played on the courtroom screens. Gasps echoed through the room. Even Becky's lawyer looked sick. But the most powerful moment came when Madison took the stand. "I wasn't supposed to testify," she began, her voice clear despite her obvious nerves. "But I need you to understand something. Mrs. Harrison told my friends I was spoiled, that my family was selfish for keeping the lake private. But that lake isn't about being rich. It's about family. It's where my great-grandfather taught my grandfather to fish, where my grandfather taught my dad, where my dad taught me. It's where I learned that some things can't be bought or stolen. They can only be earned and shared with love." She looked directly at Becky. "You tried to take more than property. You tried to take my history and my future. But you failed, because you don't understand that real value isn't in money, it's in memories." Derek Thompson's testimony sealed Becky's fate. In exchange for immunity, he revealed everything: the shell companies, the systematic targeting of properties, the kickbacks from contractors. "Becky said rich people like the Brooks didn't deserve nice things," he testified. "She called it redistributing wealth, but really she was just stealing." He showed bank records revealing over $200,000 in embezzled HOA funds hidden in various accounts. The jury deliberated for exactly 37 minutes. When they returned, the foreman stood solemnly. "On all 23 counts, we find the defendant guilty." Becky's composure finally cracked. She sobbed as the judge delivered her sentence: 5 years in federal prison, $200,000 in restitution to the defrauded couples, and a lifetime ban from serving in any fiduciary capacity. As the bailiffs prepared to lead her away, she turned to Madison and mouthed something. The bailiff closest to her went rigid. "What did she say?" I demanded. He looked uncomfortable. "She said, 'See you at your wedding, sweetie.'" Madison gripped my hand tightly, but her voice was steady. "Let her dream about it in prison. She'll have 5 years to imagine the wedding she'll never crash." 3 months later, the lake hosted its first double celebration. Madison's Sweet 16 had finally arrived, combined with Amy Wilson's wedding in a beautiful fusion of joy and redemption. The morning sun painted golden ripples across the water as 300 guests arrived to find something magical. Madison's vision of floating lanterns had come to life, hundreds of them ready to launch at sunset. She'd insisted on helping Amy with the wedding planning, creating a celebration that honored both milestones. "This is what the lake was meant for," Madison said, radiant in her birthday dress. "Bringing people together in love, not greed." The transformation wasn't just in the decorations. Our entire community had changed. The emergency election had swept in a new HOA board led by Frank Rodriguez, whose first act was to pass a constitutional amendment. The HOA shall have no authority over private property beyond ensuring basic maintenance standards, period. Carlos Martinez, seeking redemption for his role as Becky's unwilling spy, headed the new Transparency Committee. Every financial record was now public, every meeting live-streamed, every decision voted on by actual homeowners. The culture of fear and intimidation that Becky had cultivated for years evaporated like morning mist. At the party, Jennifer Martinez danced with her newborn daughter, having found love again with a man who admired her strength. The Thompsons renewed their vows by the water, the community rallying to give them the ceremony Becky had stolen. Even Madison's school friends had come around, apologizing for believing the lies. "We were idiots," her friend Jennifer admitted. "You're like the bravest family ever." The lake itself seemed to celebrate, with perfect weather and a family of swans choosing that day to visit for the first time in years. My grandfather would have called it a sign. But the sweetest vindication came from an unexpected source. Becky's house, foreclosed during her imprisonment, was purchased by the community and transformed into the Harrison Center for Ethical Leadership, a meeting space for nonprofits and community groups. A bronze plaque by the door read, "Dedicated to those who stand against corruption and fight for justice." Madison suggested adding a subtitle, "Irony Lives Here." 1 year after the trial, our Freedom from HOA Tyranny barbecue had become an annual tradition. Hundreds of neighbors gathered at various homes, sharing stories of standing up to bullies and supporting each other through difficult times. The lake had become a symbol, not of exclusivity, but of the right to protect what you love from those who would exploit it. Madison surprised everyone by launching an app called HOA Watch, designed to help homeowners document abuses and connect with legal resources. It gained 50,000 downloads in the first month, with reviews calling it essential for every homeowner. My daughter had channeled her trauma into purpose, helping others avoid what we'd endured. "Dad, I got my acceptance letter," Madison told me one evening as we fished from the dock. Stanford Law School had offered her early admission. "Property law and constitutional rights," she said with a smile. "Someone needs to protect families from the Beckys of the world." I thought of my grandfather, who'd built this dock with his own hands, and somehow knew to protect it legally for future generations. "He'd be so proud of you," I said. "Of both of us," Madison corrected. "We didn't just save the lake, Dad, we saved our community's soul." As if the universe wanted to test our resolve, new neighbors moved into Becky's old house last week. I watched with amusement as the wife approached, with a clipboard, measuring tape visible in her pocket. "Mr. Brooks, I'm Linda Patterson. I was hoping to discuss access to your lake for my morning yoga classes. I'm thinking of starting a small business, nothing major, maybe 20 or 30 people." Madison and I exchanged knowing looks. She already had her phone out, activating the 47 cameras we now had covering every angle of the property. "Mrs. Patterson," I said pleasantly, "let me tell you about our lake's history, and about a woman named Becky Harrison who's currently serving year 2 of a 5-year federal sentence." Linda's face went pale as I continued. "But please, tell me more about this yoga business. I'm sure the FBI would find it fascinating." She retreated so fast she left her clipboard behind. Madison picked it up, glancing at the contents. "Dad, look, HOA President nomination forms." We both burst out laughing. Some people never learn, but we were ready this time. The cameras were rolling, the lawyers were on speed dial, and the community stood united. Becky Harrison had taught us all a valuable lesson. Freedom requires eternal vigilance, and sometimes the best defense is a good offense. That evening, as Madison and I sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson, she asked, "Do you think there will always be people like Becky trying to take what isn't theirs?" I thought about it carefully. Probably, but there will also always be people like us, standing up to them. That's what your great-grandfather knew when he protected this place. Not just with deeds and laws, but with love and determination passed down through generations. A text alert broke the peaceful moment. "Federal prison, thinking of you." I showed Madison, who grinned. "Should we be worried?" I tossed my phone aside and cast my line back into the water. Let her think. She's got 3 more years to do nothing but that. Meanwhile, we've got fish to catch and a life to live. The lake stretched out before us, unchanged despite all the drama, a testament to the power of standing your ground. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more tales of justice served, because last week, Linda Patterson filed to run for HOA president, and she's already measuring community gardens. But this time, we're ready. Madison's got the cameras rolling, Ryan's on speed dial, and the FBI has us on their Christmas card list. Some battles you only have to fight once. Others require constant vigilance. But when you're protecting what you love, it's always worth it.
If this story made you feel better about your own life choices, our job is done. Give it a like and check out the next BD Stories twist.